Awesome. Thanks. Welcome. Thanks for attending Putting the Brakes on Dystopia. I'm Bernd, and in the next 20 minutes, I'll talk about dystopias, utopias, and how to use the SolarPunk mindset in the German energy transition. It's the third day of ETH Prague, and you've all sat through an amazing array of presentations and workshops already. And just to give you a little incentive and additional motivation for yet another SolarPunk talk, I have a little quest for you. That's my dog Tony, and he's hidden in this presentation a few times. So the first person who comes up to me afterwards will get a book goodie bag. Who can tell me how many Tonys are in the presentation? So about myself, I'm the founder and the creative director of Ellery Studio. We're a Berlin-based transformation design agency, and we're working predominantly in the fields of climate action, renewable energy, and social change. And relevant to this talk is we are convinced that we can steer, accelerate, and drive change. And that we should not wait for a catastrophe to force us to act, but take a personal stand on the question of what is the future we want to live in. And then take steps to get there together. And we follow this guiding principle in all our projects. We support organizations in shaping sustainable transformation by providing low-threshold access to relevant information, by collectively anticipating the future, and by taking action. And as you can see, we also have a little diagram explaining that. It's all about understanding, anticipating, and taking action. And this is our team. It consists of information designers, of strategists, facilitators, and future foresight specialists. And as you can see, all very enthusiastic. But let's get right to it. Part 1, the future as a catastrophe. So things in the world are not going very rosy. Here symbolized through this pixelated dumpster fire. And Dystopia is having a cultural moment because of that. As a society, we're totally obsessed with dystopia in a way that's not productive and also not healthy. Natural disasters gain a lot of traction in pop culture since the 2000s. And some of you might be saying, yeah, but you're German, and isn't Germany doing quite okay-ish when it comes to climate action and renewable energy, and isn't life good there? And to some degree, that's true, especially when it comes to addressing climate change, where Germany has been a world leader for many, many decades. Not so much anymore, though. Starting in the 90s, Germany began to frame its efforts to tackle climate change as the Energiewende. That means energy transition, a move away from old fossil fuel-based energy sources towards more renewable and green energy. And the suffix Wende means turning point. And to give you an example of how serious Germans take this word, the only other time it was used so far was during the reunification between East and West Germany after the fall of the Berlin Wall. But sadly, excitement for the Energiewende is stalling, it's lagging today. Public enthusiasm is drying up, and goals aren't being met at all. In fact, some of Germany's climate goals already were too weak and too modest when they were framed, and they are not up to the task of fixing the climate. And communication with the public isn't done in an effective way at all. It's dry, it's academic, it's hard to parse, even for people who work in that field. Another big issue is the motivation. German politicians no longer have a vision attached to the Energiewende. It's all doom and gloom, and how to avoid that. And here's a little quote by a former German chancellor to illustrate that conservative mindset. He says, "If you have visions, go see a doctor." And also, we have a huge industry pressure that derails climate change initiatives. And hint, hint, obviously, Germany, it's the car industry. Okay, a little service announcement. Big failed ideas coming up. We, the world, and especially Berliners, are haunted by the big ideas of the 20th century, which were National Socialism and state communism. And you could even say that Berlin in particular is the graveyard of big ideas. And very important, big ideas, not great ideas. And there's an abundance of big ideas of progress and modernity that ended up in an over-reliance on science that then later got debunked. Starting in the 50s and 60s, there was a giddy promise of new untested technology and schemes. This led to many nasty problems and login effects that we struggle with today, like car-centered cities or industrial wastelands. We see some of this embrace of risky ideas and technology repeated again today when it comes to the rise of geoengineering as an alternative to taking climate action through mitigation or policy. So it's very tempting to let those big ideas take us right back to dystopia. Better not to have big ideas. In some ways, it's easier to just lean back and then wallow, but I think you'd all agree we shouldn't do that, so it's good if we put on the face of optimism to see what could be possible when we collectively put our mind to it. And let's not forget, sometimes just a different perspective already turns one person's dystopia into a utopia. That brings me to part 2, rewriting futures with the help of utopian thinking. So what do I actually mean with utopia? Is it the island the philosopher Thomas More dreamed of already in 1516? With his book Utopia, he kind of set the baseline for utopian thinking. What he did was he located his desired ideas of a better world in an island which is geographically far away. And the metaphor of an island was later then adopted in many further utopias and almost became a symbol for parallel realities. And just to visualize how long ago this was, that is Thomas More, like medieval stuff. Later then, humanity discovered more and more of the planet, and it became harder to imagine an island that was somewhere hidden away. And so the utopian ideas moved from the geographical dimension to the temporal dimension, which means the authors of utopian writing found places for the utopian ideas in the future. If we look at current definitions, I totally identify with Liesmann, who's an Austrian philosopher, and he says, like, this what could be done is something that triggers a completely new perspective on fiction and utopia. It's understanding them as a process. And it's not only about creating a perfect but non-existent kind of world, it's about creating and shaping dreams together with the intention of changing reality. So let's have a look at something called the future cone. Have you seen that one in presentations before here already? It's a futures foresight kind of thing. It categorizes plausible, probable, and preferable futures. And it shows the plurality of these futures, like each with a different quality. And of course, you won't find utopias in this realm of the probable futures. Utopian ideas are outside of the future cone. And in the sense of Liesmann, what could be done, we understand this as intentional utopias. And intentional utopias we understand as a form of membrane. It marks the transition from the impossible to the possible. And like a membrane, it lets through ideas and dreams and visions that inform our acting today. And utopias can provoke, they can inspire and help us to explore new horizons. By taking dreams seriously, we can empower more people to transform reality, inspired by their shared dreams, and to take action and active role in demanding and inventing better futures. So all that's left is we have to craft them. Because as Oscar Wilde says, a map of the world that does not include utopia is not really worth glancing at. Utopian thinking, but it demands patience. It demands fearlessness, critical reflection, analytic rigor, optimism, and in particular, the will to take action. Contingency and uncertainty, the very things that often keep us from action, from acting, can be positive and foster creativity and potential. And the conditions of the utopias we craft can be shaped and changed, enabling for a diversity of futures, increasing the possibilities and the junctions that we can make there. And the opposite is the case in dystopias, in a future as a catastrophe. And the main thing utopias can create is excitement. And that arises mostly through images and stories. Storytelling, we had a few talks about that before. And these things, they grew up out of imagination. And imagination has one very particular genre where it takes effect, and that's, of course, science fiction. It's a demonstration of ideas that do not yet exist. One could say it's a showcase of the future. But in which direction are we going? Is it a future exemplified by Blade Runner? As a designer, I would say no, that's not what I want. We want utopias to inspire people, utopias that are role models for us, and that we absolutely see in SolarPunk. Okay, so moving on to SolarPunk. Well, after 3 days, you probably heard enough about what SolarPunk is and what it does and how it works, so I'll make this part very short. Central point also for this talk is what does a sustainable civilization look like and how can we get there? So what does it look like physically? There's a handful of pre-AI era visualizations that heavily influenced the whole movement. And I think you've seen this image before in other talks already. That's one of them. It's an artist called Imperial Boy. I've seen it in at least one other presentation already. So the premise of SolarPunk addresses both the technological capability, but also the collective imagination of how to create a new ecologically balanced world. And it follows in the footsteps of other great story punks. First and foremost, obviously, the cyberpunk movement that gained popularity in the 80s. And SolarPunk right now seems to me finally outgrows it and or at least catches up. And compared to cyberpunk, SolarPunk is actually not at all that radical. Most technologies and practices that it promotes exist already in the here and now. What is radical about it is that it demands radical social change. And the emphasis here is put on imagining. Because the radical change that we need right now is a move towards a fossil-free society. But the imagery that we had for the last decades is something like this. That's not very inspiring, it's not captivating. It's basically just showing the technology. And that's the equivalent of a badly drawn cat. And I would even say like this has more stories to tell than the ones before. But as an energy transition designer, I can definitely say that levity and fun are absolutely key to acceptance and buy-in for the energy transition. And SolarPunk provides a fantastic narrative framework for this, for exciting and imaginative speculation. So how could it look like? I brought a few projects with me to show you what we do at Ellery Studio. We do a lot of science communication, a lot of support for the energy transition. And I want to show you how we apply this mindset and utopian thinking to play, explore, and engage in our daily work in the energy transition. And contrary to the idea of this event, we mostly work super low-key and non-tech based. So first off, the challenge we face in our work is this. The focus for policymakers and politicians in Germany is mostly always put on acceptance and getting people to endure the change. It's basically saying, we know we have to get there, now sell it to the community. But we found it was far better to get people involved in the Energiewende, in the energy transition, with invitation and attraction, much like the space race in the 60s. The SolarPunk mindset for that is super awesome. Like, its premise is a fertile ground for participation and for collective imagination. So our first attempt to explore the potentials of SolarPunk for the energy transition happened in 2017 and 18. After our first contact with the concept, it was still quite a niche topic, limited to a few publications, a few Tumblr posts. There weren't many visuals out there, just the few that I showed you already. And when we saw that there is, in Germany at least, basically no event or community around it, we as rapid prototypers at heart assembled a coalition for exploration from our network, from energy providers to researchers to scientists to artists, and to form new narratives around this SolarPunk movement. And this is mostly because exciting narratives are in absolutely high demand in the German energy transition community. So yes, this is how the SolarPunk Festival SPF 2018 happened, which took place in Berlin and surroundings. And in a 2-week program, we've brought together about 50 activists, energy professionals, scientists, artists, students at the Technical University of Berlin, and had about 150 visitors joining us for our closing event. And together we thought about desirable futures, eco-balanced futures, and how they could look like. We have approached this subject through scientific lectures, so we got a whole bunch of known future scientists to contribute. We used design thinking methods and future studies methods. Then we traveled together to an open cast pit mine, where the artists then painted a large mural on the old energy station, based on concepts they learned from the experts and scientists. And while we painted, we had an unexpected audience of 30,000 people, because at this very day, at this very locations, it was just pure coincidence, one of Germany's top punk bands was playing at this location. So the punk part was definitely covered. And we had public lecture series in Berlin in collaboration with the meetup group Speculative Futures Berlin. I can recommend checking them out. It's a global network. And finally, we had an incredible DIY installation set up that was exhibited. It was a 30 square meter living capsule, a SolarPunk living capsule, completely built from recycled materials. So let's have a quick look inside. Completely DIY everything. And there you can see lots of narratives that the artists translated from the lectures that they saw about living in the future. So I can't go into detail in all of the things, because every artifact has a little story. They range from interior to pets to UI solutions for this interactive home control setup. But the main essential thing that we have created with SolarPunk Festival is an environment, an interaction. We have opened up spaces of possibilities and and allowed questions to about the what if. And that is totally SolarPunk, how we understand it. And it maybe is playful, perhaps a little bit naive, and it's all DIY, but it can create images and narratives that inspire. So if you want to check out more, maybe visit solarpunkfestival.com. There will be probably also one coming up again soon. So let's move on to another SolarPunky outreach project. In 2018, when Fridays for Future was in full swing, we started a project within a research grant about visualizing the ideas of climate activists in a format we called Future Booth. And just like in a future booth, you take a picture, but in this case, it is a snapshot of the future. And in the beginning, this was via graphic recording. Our illustrators would on location translate ideas from these interview situations into visuals. We used SolarPunk as a framework, as a narrative framework for these interviews. So we had those demos, so that was good. But we also moved onto politicians and scientists, as you see, slightly out of their comfort zone. But that got much easier with the advent of AI image generation. So last July, we moved up to use that technology using Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And we go to conferences. We have 10-minute interviews. Our future scientists do the interview. We have prompters in the background who translate the stuff directly into images. And then in a back and forth, we zero in on the vision that this person has. And it looks a little bit like that. It addresses greener cities and biodiversity, or even radically new ways of housing, a new sense of community, or very green transportation. It's an inclusive future almost every time. But other images just go for a more prominent integration of renewable energy in public space. And as you see, all of these images have a backstory that is connected to a single person or a group of people's vision, and kind of translates their personal hopes and dreams. Just like this one, that was the ambassador of Tibet to Germany who dreams of how Tibet could populate its glacial retreat areas. Or this one, it's a very prominent 11-year-old Indian climate activist. She's the founder of the Child Movement and the special envoy to the president of East Timor, and she had a clear vision of how she wants her community to live. Okay, I'm seeing the time is running out, so I'll be quick. If you want to see more pictures, check this out. There's a website coming up. It's in the making right now. Last thing I want to show you, because that's the goodie bag that I brought to you, is we also use these utopian ideas in many of the science communication projects we do. And this one, for example, is a graphic novel about sustainable mobility. And it features a space dog and his family and their antics when it comes to cars, bikes, and public transportation. We translate a lot of data into comprehensible stories in the form of a comic strip to make the topic exciting. And it features tons of scientific background information. But the most SolarPunk publication we did so far is the Infographic Energy Transition coloring book. And it's a book with 33 infographics that can be colored in, where you learn about the past, the present, the future of renewable energy and climate action. So the book was very successful. We published several editions. Both won us a lot of international recognition for this way of low-threshold communication. But the most proof of concept, I would say, is that it is in the possession of not one, but actually two German chancellors. So, and here's the thing, how often have you seen a German politician smile? No? Not so much, right? Germans in general. Yeah, but you can own those books too, and you only have to tell me how many Tonys you have seen in this presentation. So to sum up real quick, what's the takeaway? What did we learn about the SolarPunk mindset and climate action? The use of utopias is fruitful to open up spaces of possibilities and to allow questions of the what if. And back to the thesis of the talk, how do we put the brakes on our dystopian moment? It's we need to understand the current workings of our system in order to rework it, and visual media and exciting narratives can help there tremendously. We need to offer alternatives that have teeth, and SolarPunk absolutely does this. And in the end, we have to take it to the streets. We have to make this an inherently public conversation. And with that, off to the future. And thank you very much. So I don't know if we have time for some questions. Yeah?
Well, first of all, if I counted right, there were 9 dogs.
Sadly not, no.
Oh no, 8, sorry, not 9, 8.
Almost.
Okay, well, whatever. And then the question, so SolarPunk Festival happened 5 years ago.
Yes.
What else did you achieve apart from the coloring book with your agency?
With my agency? Oh, we work a lot in like
or maybe like you can just tell us about one case that you did.
What?
One of the cases that you did, like one of the most interesting ones?
Well, the most interesting usually are often not the most effective ones. We do a lot of boots on the ground work with like municipal city providers. Like we moderate a lot of processes about people finding words for what they desire, like what is a desirable future that they want to live in. Sounds easy, is actually not that easy. So we do a lot of workshop facilitation, but on the side we do a lot of science communication. And that is the visual part, usually, that gets a lot of recognition because there is not super much out there yet. There is a lot of change in the last 10 years, but when we started, basically all publications were still published in Word format. So there's a tremendous change now with this public focus on renewable energy and the climate crisis. So design really got its foothold in the whole energy transition community.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I also did a workshop on SolarPunk, by the way.
I was there, of course.
Oh, you were? Oh, fantastic. Wonderful.
Like your talk, not your workshop.
Oh, okay. Well, I would love to know what you thought about it after. I'll talk to you. Anyway, so 2 questions are, one is, how do you measure the impact of your work if you do that? And then second is, wait, it's at my tongue. How do you see your work relating to the Web3 world? Because you're clearly at a Web3 conference.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so impact, it's always difficult. That's always the first step we do in projects, defining the measurements, the metrics of how to actually identify ways to measure that. Obviously, download numbers for these things, we very often work in publicly funded research projects. Then all these things that we produce are always publicly available for free. So download numbers, sales numbers of the books, we always, as designers, we love the artifact. So obviously we need to offer that. Then generally media coverage was very good with these books. And also, as you can imagine, it's pretty hard to get FaceTime with a world leader. And these kind of weird, fun, harmless, playful objects are a magic key to get through the security lines. It's a testament, definitely. So impact depends from project to project. When we do social work kind of stuff in communities, then obviously it's like qualitative, like we do interviews with people, we do a lot of qualitative analysis. Now on to connect to the Web3 community. As you've seen, we work a lot very low-key, low-tech. And of course, we want to bring in the technology, but the truth is that we're at the very beginning of this conversation when it comes bringing this stuff into communities. So it's an additional hurdle for people to have to engage with technology. There is, of course, certain groups like this audience where it would be no problem whatsoever, but imagine a typical neighborhood in like rural North Rhine-Westphalia who just got robbed of their existence because the coal industry was shut down. Like, try to come to them with any crypto-themed kind of idea, they will chase you right out. And stuff like that happened to us. So it's a friction kind of work, and we bring in technology whenever it offers itself. As you see in the AI visualizations, is a a heavenly gift for us because it works perfectly in the future foresight community. As a tool, of course, not as a thing that solves all our problems by just using the technology. It's always a matter of the setting, of how is it embedded in like these processes of change. I hope that answers the question.
I think the time is out.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, who wants to give it another shot with the books? There you go, lucky number 7. There you go.